We use words like Mahasamadhi and conscious exit and so on. But just to say it, what we are really talking about is death. It's not a topic that we often talk about. And we don't say Yogannada died or Sri Yukteswar died. We say they left their body. And in fact, it's almost a tradition in India and in the yogic teachings, and therefore here at Ananda, to refer to these things as somebody leaving their body. And we have to dwell on that a little bit because it has, there is, when it is said that the masters leave their body consciously. Now that by itself is not saying something profound all by itself, because those of us that have been during the last moments of many souls, we know that many people do leave their body consciously. In fact, you're conscious one moment and you're not conscious the next moment. That is often the definition of death. So what does it mean to leave your body consciously? It means to leave your body with the consciousness of who you are as being greater than the body. When we leave the body with the full consciousness, with the full awareness that I am something greater, then things are different. And this is referred to as Mahasamadhi. And there is a lot to unpack here, and I'm going to, I realized as I was sitting there in meditation, I know I was supposed to meditate and not think about my talk, but I was a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. And I thought maybe this talk could be a little complicated. I'll try not to make it so. But there is a lot to unpack here. Many years ago, about 25 years ago, I was practicing martial arts, and one of the primary trainings that we were given is to hold these very hard body positions for a ridiculously long amount of time. So one of those positions looked something like this. These are new robes, I'm not sure how they behave. So you had to hold something like this for maybe 45 minutes, okay? Now, as you go maybe 2 or 3 minutes into that position, your body begins to vibrate or shake because the muscles seemingly have reached their limit. You're standing there and then like, oh my God, now what? Then the instructor, who at this point you don't really have very good feelings for, he or she walks around and then says something like, relax your body. And you're there, and relax your body. I'm not really sure what you mean. But if you try, and it's an act of willpower or willingness, you really have to want to do it, then it takes maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Then all the heaviness disappears. And it is possible to hold that position for extended periods of time because the energy begins to flow. The brain takes about 5 minutes to convince itself that the signals it's receiving from the body arise out of habit, and that's not the reality. And if you go past that thought, if you go past the consciousness that the body is only capable of this much, then you emerge into a new consciousness where you accept a larger reality, and therefore it's possible to stay that way for a long period of time. This is every inner tradition has a training of something like this. This is always the case. And in the tradition of yoga, there's a special name given to this. It's called pranayama, the control of energy. So where I'm going with this is when you are in the midst of a particular reality, and it is said in the yogic teachings, the the soul is often not called the soul. It is simply called that which is embodied. The Sanskrit word for that is dehinaha, that which is embodied, meaning something infinite that's been confined by embodiment. So it's said that the soul is sheathed, it's wrapped in something. And, the physical body and the energy body and the causal body and this and that, there's a whole bunch of things. But the whole process of enlightenment, of liberation, is casting off the sheets. That's why these kinds of trainings exist, that bang in the middle of a reality that we have habituated to, you affirm something greater, and then you emerge out of it. That's where, the butterfly, we transform. Coming back to Mahasamadhi, the entire process of living and dying, even the word death, not the word, but the concept of how we think about it, says, I am losing something. I am no longer something. And what happens after that, the nihilists say, well, you go off into nothingness. That's it. You got one life to live, so do what you want. You're good. Or the other set of people will say, well, you get into eternal damnation, but on the off chance that you did everything exactly right, almost certainly you won't, because you're a sinner, but on the off chance that you did, then maybe you'll go to heaven. And these are the ways of looking at this. But for Mahasamadhi, it says, well, what if you are already that which you seek? You are just sheathed in some other reality. Are you able, in the moment of death, when that reality is the greatest, are you able to affirm that you are not that? So that's why there is the Bhagavad Gita, which is the textbook of yoga, if you will. It's a conversation between God and his devotee, God in the form of Krishna, and devotee in the form of Arjuna. It has 18 chapters, and among these, chapter 8 is probably the most mysterious, most esoteric. It's pretty extraordinary. The chapter is named Akshara Parabrahma Yoga, and translated, direct translation, means undiminishing, ever-expanding reality that is beyond creation. That's the undiminishing, ever-expanding reality that's beyond creation. Let's talk about that. That's what the chapter says. And in that, verse 5, it goes something like this. It says, Anta kalecha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yaha prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayaha. And what that means is, in the moment of death, if you are able to remember who you are, and in that remembrance, if you proceed from the body, meaning leave your body, then there is no doubt that you will reach me. So this is a kind of an odd definition of enlightenment. We think that we have to do good works, we have to do this, we have to do that. But all this is saying is, hey, in the moment of transition, just like this, if right in the midst of that hard, shaking pain, are you able to think of relaxation? Similarly, in this final moment, are you able to think with all your mind, body, and soul? Are you able to think of who you really are, a spark of divine light? Then you're done. You won't need to come back. You're liberated. But here's the problem. It's very, very hard to do that in that moment if you haven't done it all your life. So there is a 9th chapter, which is somewhat less mysterious but equally profound, that says something like this. Ananyas chintayanto ma yejana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. That's verse number 22. It says, all you need to do is keep thinking of God and keep meditating on God. Then God says, I will make permanent your gains and I will make good your deficiencies. But then the word ananya means with the exception of all else, or to the exclusion of all else, if you keep thinking about God all the time. So that's not saying God this way, but it's more that, oh, did I do this? No, I really feel the fact that you did this. Is this fault really mine? Well, I wouldn't be in this pickle if it were not you, so this fault is actually yours. I say that in jest, but having that feeling of offering of both your faults and your good deeds to God, that's a really big deal. Intellectually, it's easy to say, but to feel it and say, oh, this too is you. Getting to that feeling, you need to work at it all your life. Otherwise, Yogananda writes in his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, it's very profound. I had never tuned into it. He says that at the moment of death, as we see death approaching, for all of us, death is something way out there. Prefer not to see it. You don't have any place at my dinner table. I don't want to think about this. But then at some point, it becomes real. And you say, oh, you're right here. At that point, when we accept that it's real, and you're right here, then Yogananda says that your life flashes before you, not just a flashback of, all these things, but you examine your life with a lens of truth that we probably haven't done. Because there is, the end of the body is nigh. And then he says there is an overwhelming feeling that emerges. It could be a feeling of guilt of all the things that I could have done that but didn't do. I could have been better. Or a feeling of contentment of a life well lived. Or more commonly, a feeling of longing for all the things that I wanted to have but didn't have. Or a feeling of regret of all the things that I'm going to leave behind that I worked so hard for. And this is, you have to put yourself in that position. That would be the biggest reality. More often than not, that's the thought that most people leave their body with. And therefore, they come back to fulfill that. So next lifetime, if you left with a lot of longing, then you will come in with a lot of ambition and perhaps achieve a lot of things. And on it goes, the cycle of birth and death. But to have the awareness to do that in the moment of death takes a lifetime of preparation. See, that's what the spiritual path is. It's really controlling the thought in that final moment. But that is, now I have, proposed a problem and offered a solution. But the story is a little deeper than that. Because here's the problem with it. To illustrate it, is a very common metaphor that's given, or analogy that's given in the Vedanta teachings. And Yogananda used this analogy more than once in his writings. And it's about this man who is from the region of Gandhara, which is northwest India. The word Gandhara is what eventually became Kandahar. It's Afghanistan. So he comes into India, so he comes across the Himalayas into the Gangetic Plain, and he's in a big forest, and he is robbed by people. And then they blindfold him, and then they tie his hands and feet. And then they leave him and go. And all he wants to do is get back to his hometown in Gandhara. But it's a lonely forest, there is nobody there. So he gets up, his hands are tied, feet are tied, he can't undo his blindfolds. He walks blindly, and then he bumps into a tree, falls down, he goes around in circles, there is rain, there is, sun, a baking sun, and all of that stuff. And he keeps doing this for who knows how long. He has a clear memory of who he is. And over time, that begins to fade. But he still knows he needs to get somewhere. This is not his home. Somewhere in there, that motivation is there. And then one day, somebody comes and says, hey, why are you running around like this? Did you know you were blindfolded? He said, oh, am I blindfolded? I thought I was blind. No, you're blindfolded. Let me open this. And he looks around. Oh, my God, this is much bigger than what I thought. I just thought I was in a dark place filled with bumps that I needed to go into. And then he doesn't even know how to use his hands or feet. So when it's untied, he feels 10,000 times more powerful. And he says, do you know where Gandhara is? I slowly things are coming back to him. And then the man says, I am from there. I have been there. Let me take you. Hold my hand. And then he goes. And they say this spiritual life is something like this, that embodied. Remember, we are limited. It's like being blindfolded and hands and feet are tied. And we need someone not us, because the name of the game is transcending the ego. So we need someone that is of a greater consciousness, who is not blindfolded, whose hands are not tied, and therefore is aware of a larger set of possibilities to untie us. It's an act of grace. You see, they have to do it. We can't. It's an act of grace. And once they do it, then all the rest we can do. Eventually, we have to walk to our hometown. They can lead us. But what this person does is untie us. That's the guru. So this is the second part of the puzzle. And this is where the most profound aspect of Mahasamadhi comes in. As you saw in those readings, in both the readings, that's why we chose it. Sri Yukteswar leaves his body. Now you can see his consciousness. So in tune with God that at the time he sat and consciously left his body, and Yogannada says, my master's body was as perfect as it was in life. And then a couple of months, the lion of Bengal is gone, Master Yogannada says. But then 2 months later, Sri Yukteswar comes back to him and says, hey, I'm here. I didn't go anywhere. From this point on, whenever you go deep into meditation and call on me, I will come. This is a promise not just Sri Yukteswar making to Master, or Master making to Swami Kriyananda. In the second reading you saw, I'm always here. It's a promise that they have made to us, to you and me. I am always here. You just need to be open to receive me. So the spiritual path, all of these things, moment of death, think of God all the time, this and that, really boils down to this. How do we tune into the consciousness of the Guru? This person that comes to rescue us from the forest when we are blindfolded and hands are tied and is ready to untie our hands, how do we, if we say, don't touch me, then we lose the battle. You see what I'm saying? So this is why, if you've heard of the thing which says spiritual path is all about receptivity, it's all about listening, it's all about welcoming the consciousness of the Guru. That's where it comes from, because it is 25% is my effort, 25% is Guru's effort on behalf of us, and 50% is God's grace. Guru's effort on behalf of us can only happen when we are open to this. So I leave you with this thought to ruminate on Mahasamadhi. By not being in their bodies, the Guru is even more available to us than perhaps when they were in their bodies, because it is possible now that they are with you, and they are with you, and they are with me, and they are with everyone else, unfettered by the kosha, their kosha called their physical body. But it's also harder for us, because Swami Kriyananda used to say that sometimes all you needed to do was sit in front of Master, meaning Yogannada. He may be discussing plans for a swimming pool or how to paint the house, but being in his presence took him to a place of higher consciousness. That's how the Guru teaches, not through teachings, but through a heart-to-heart communication. That's why there are many gurus in India who are maunis, who have taken a vow of silence, but yet the disciples receive what they want because it's conveyed through feelings and through intuition. Because they are not in their physical form, we need, each of us, to find a way, first and foremost, tune into them. You can do that by having an altar and by looking at the photo of the Guru. Look at it in the beginning of your meditation, even if it's for a few minutes, until you feel Guru's presence in your heart. And then begin your meditation. Then you're good. You see what I'm saying? Or chant something until you say, my heart is open, I'm ready to listen to what you're about to say. When you do the practice, imagine your Guru practicing with you. These might seem like odd little things to do, but that's the promise, you see. If we do that, then they can untie because we are unable to. And the rest of it falls together because God's promise is always there. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Forsaking all other dharmas, surrender to me alone, and I will lift you up from this samsara, meaning cycle of birth and death, and grant you liberation, have no doubt. This is a promise that God makes. That is there, that's 50%, but it starts with this small act, and only this small act, attunement to the Guru. So that I'd like to offer you as the final message of Mahasamadhi. Om.